I just don't know where to start with Dr. Stephanie Burns. She's a woman who I've admired for probably 20 years. I respect her more than I can ever tell you, and 90 minutes is not going to be enough. I'll tell you that from the beginning. She is an educator, first and foremost. In fact, one of the world's leading in adult learning. When the people who excel in any given field need to get better, it's known in the industry as a Burns problem. I love that because she's one of a kind. She can take people who are deemed as being great to mastership. From world champion musicians to Olympians, they know where to go when they need to excel. Dr. Burns not only teaches, but is an incredible student herself. In her professional world, to help her students, she's thrown herself many times into learning mode in completely new environments, entering the world of music, dancing, motorcycles, martial arts, triathlon, and of course, horsemanship. She's not only dabbled, but she gives it a hell of a go and got really good at what she puts her mind to. Why? Because people come to her with a problem, and she tests her own methodology to improve herself. She walks her walk, and I love that. And that is why I wanted her as our inaugural guest for our 12 months of education. I first heard of Dr. Burns when I was working with David Lichman from Pirelli. Her work was being used to help adult learners in the horsemanship world, and it changed so many people's lives. She wrote the book Move Closer, Stay Longer about her experience of learning as an adult and entering the world of horsemanship, and it's fantastic. Her curiosity and tenacity led her from the military and then on to consult for NASA. She was instrumental in helping people understand the first computers in the world. Something that really caught my eye with her work was the work she did with Larry Wilson of the 1 Minute Salesman fame from Santa Fe, where she asked the question, can media-based training replicate face-to-face training? And that's something that's very dear to our hearts here in Horse Class, and I found that fascinating. Through this work, Dr. Burns saw a need to help adults learn how to learn. People from all walks of life have transformed their lives due to the dedication and passion she's shown in helping us overcome ourselves and the constraints that society puts on us, me being one of them. After her move to Australia in 1987, she created her world-famous Learning to Learn program, which quite frankly changed the face of education for adults. Fast forward, and Dr. Burns has encapsulated how it feels to age. But instead of agreeing to the norms set by convention and the media, she stood up and said, wait a minute, this is not right. Her new book, Dangerous Cultural Messages About Getting Old, it's incredible. I can honestly say reading that book has changed my life in the space of a week. I welcome Dr. Stephanie Burns. I'm so excited
for that lovely introduction. I'm always surprised who I am.
To learn as an adult, I imagine that we need to change in some form. And as we get older, I feel like we really resist change, even if we know it's good for us. And maybe not just as we're getting older, we all resist change. What is something that you see in adults that make or break them if they're open to change? Is there a trait in us that you can kind of meet people and go, now they would be open to change and they wouldn't? Is that something that exists?
Well, okay, backtrack for a second. So adults spend a whole life typically being competent at something. So you got their education, they get off in life, they go to their jobs, and they get really good at something. They are in a kind of a zone of knowing what to do, when to do it, how to solve problems, et cetera, et cetera. So when an adult then comes to a situation whereby they either have a desire to learn something new, or they have to learn something new for their job, that all of a sudden puts them in a very different place of uncertainty, of ambiguity, of feeling humiliated and embarrassed. They become a beginner again, and those feelings can be quite uncomfortable. And because they haven't experienced the experience of being a learner for so long, it feels so uncomfortable that they tend to want to move away. So there can be resistance to change or to learning simply because the feelings associated with it when they begin again are problematic. They're things that the brain basically says, oh, my human's in distress. Let's stop doing this and go back and do it the old way. So you've got that kind of thing going on. But as far as traits, really, I think the biggest thing is kind of the messages that people get around. It's like the old Henry Ford quote of whether you think you can or can't, you'll be right. And so people think I need an I can mindset. Well, I can and I can't are highly problematic because they're judgments. You're judging in advance that you're going to be able to do something. So let's say I can do it, and you go out, and because it's new, you can't do it for a long enough period of time. You think you've let yourself down. Like it's just not possible. So I can is not bad, but it doesn't necessarily lead you to persist over time. I can't is problematic only if you use it as a roadblock to never even make an attempt to do something. I can't is I can't tell you the number of high flying individuals I work with whose basic mindset is, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Or you see them at the end of like breaking a world record and they'll go, did you know you could do that? And they'll go, I had no idea that I could do that. So I tend to move away from this kind of the cheap shots or shortcuts of I can and I can't. The people I find most successful at learning as adults who live in this kind of mindset of, I don't know. Can you, learn to swim 500 meters? I don't know. Never tried. Can you climb, do the Appalachian track? I don't know. Never tried. Can you lift 80 kilos on a bench press? I don't know. I've never tried. So because they're I don't know is an open mindset. And it's probably the only way to have a truly open mindset is to be curious about, well, I don't know, but I'm going to give it a go. And then each attempt, you're feeling like you're making some sort of progress or success. Today, I did a little bit more than maybe I did yesterday, or maybe a little bit more than I did last week. And I feel like I'm on a pathway. Now, there might come a day where I go, now I'm pretty sure I can. But big goals don't start there because you cannot know. I can't know as your teacher. You can't know as an individual what you can and can't do until you put in effort to see if that's possible. So for me, that's one of the first things I have to explore with any adult student is that their mind is open to the possibility that they can make this change. They don't even know how they're going to make it. That's my job. But they have to have an open mind that it's possible for them to make the change.
I love that. And that resonates, I'm sure, with a lot of our students, because we talk about in the Wise Riders Club, we talk about the 1% rule. So when I'm training horses or I'm training people to train horses, I say, don't look at the whole end goal. You can have your goal, but then break it down into as many approximations as you can. My next question, and I know this is a very broad topic and we could literally have a whole webinar on this, but I would say 85 to 90% of our students in the whole of horse class, when polled, seek us out through lack of confidence and fear. Now, I understand horses can be dangerous. We're not saying no one's ever, if you do this, you're never going to get hurt. We know that that's ridiculous. But how can we help people move past fear and thrive in learning rather than being frightened of even starting?
Sure, I get that. And as you mentioned when you in the intro, move closer, stay longer, which wasn't just my experience with horses. It was I used horses as the vehicle to talk about strategies for overcoming fear. Fear is a highly functional part of being a human being. We're wired up that anytime the brain perceives it's human is at risk of losing something, losing your life, losing money, losing relationships, whatever the case may be, it triggers an automatic hormonal response. And how we know it is we feel the symptoms. It could be sweating, it can be shaking, it can be, your stomach goes crazy with butterflies, you get a dry mouth. So we feel the symptoms of that. Typical response, obviously, the brain's trying to get us to move away from that. But obviously, if the fear is being caused by something we want to do, such as riding our horse, well, then the fear is to the degree you're safe with your horse, then the fear is counterproductive in you getting the goal. And that was coming up a lot with some of the horsemen and women during my time with Pirelli. So I had just finished the PhD, which dealt with emotions in learning, one of them being fear. And I thought, well, I'm going to see if we can make some sense. So we started doing some fear makeover type training. So I developed a strategy for having people overcome these fears with horses, and tested them both with myself, which is what the basis of the book is, which makes people laugh, cry, and relate to their own experience. And then we started doing that with students as well to test it. When I felt I had it right, I knew it was working, then I sat down to write the book. So for fear, to me, fear is a shift in your nervous system. It's getting your nervous system to become comfortable in proximity to the thing that's scaring you, right? So that's the move closer. We need to move close enough. Let's say you're too afraid to pick up your horse's hind feet for whatever reason. The question is, how close can I get to my horse's hind feet before I start to feel the onset of the fear response? And as soon as it comes up in a minor way, I stay there. Stay longer. I then move away, and then I move forward, and then I move away, and then I move forward. Eventually, that position will not trigger the response, which means I can now move a little bit closer. As soon as the response comes on, I stay. Then I move away, then I stay, then move. Slowly over time, and it doesn't take long. I mean, people don't ride I've had people say I haven't ridden my horse for a decade because of fear. So it takes a week or 2 or 3 to overcome this, so what, right? It's like you then have your horse for the rest of your time. So slowly over time, you get close enough in proximity where you can touch the hindquarters, where you can rub and bend over, rub down the thing, and lift up the leg, and it's done. So move closer, stay longer is kind of a strategy that is a kind of anointing or adjusting your nervous system in proximity to the thing that's causing fear. And it works, and it's done in millimeters. And when it doesn't work for people is when they go too far or too close too soon. So people want to ride, and they get on, and they scare themselves to death. I mean, for me, riding, because I'd never ridden before, it was about, I would, sit on the fence and bring my horse over, and I just rub him on the back, and eventually I put one foot on his back, and then I sent him away, and then eventually I slid on and just stood there, didn't move at all, because any movement was like way too much stimulation. So we moved closer and stayed longer until I could get him in a walk, and then later in a trot, and so forth and so on. I have more emails from people saying because of that book, they are riding, or because of that book, they're back with their horses. But and all the strategies are there. So it's about getting specific. See, and this is one other thing I'll say about this. We oftentimes, when we have a fear, say, I'm afraid of riding, or I'm afraid of my horse, right? It's generalized. Very hard to fix that. So in the strategies in the book, we're getting people to go, what specifically about riding? And they'll go, I can. So I have them literally write this in columns, right? And so in column A, they say, I ask them, what can you do riding your horse where you don't feel any sensation at all? And they would say, well, I can ride my horse in my own round yard. I can ride my horse, so long as I'm I can ride my horse if somebody's holding the rein and taking me for like a pony ride, whatever the case may be. Column B, what when I do at riding causes me to begin to feel something, but I can still do it. So like I can ride with two other riders, but it makes me a bit anxious, but I can still do it. Third column is what can I not do?
Yes.
Because the fear is too great. Then the game becomes we play move closer, stay longer with the things in column C to move them into column B. And column B gets solved by doing a ton of repetition. I need to do a lot of column B to move it into column A. So that's the basic kind of formulation of you need to understand the fear for what it is, and then you need to have a strategy that legitimately, no tricks, no shortcuts, no feel the fear and do it anyway. No, you're a wimp if you're not afraid. Nope. These are perfectly, and typically fears come up because we got caught out in an unexpected event, or a teacher asked us to do too much too soon. I work with a lot of performance anxiety, especially with musicians. And they sometimes at a very young age get pushed to perform too soon and in too big an environment. And those kids will stop playing. And I meet them when they're 50 and they haven't played, but they still want to play. And the anxiety is so high. So we have all kinds of little move closer, stay longer tricks for musicians and for other people. So that's a short course on.
Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal. And, you know, that book was life-changing for so many people, like you said, in many different fields. In your new book, there's a line that just came to me when you were talking about that. It's about controlling the brain. It's yours, you choose the direction. And I often talk about, people say learning takes place outside of the comfort zone. Well, for me, with the way that I work with students and from what I learned from you 20 years ago, is like, let's gently push it out by moving closer and staying longer. It takes a certain element, doesn't it, of being able to stop your brain from racing away with you and racing ahead. And that's what I love about that line in the book. It's about controlling the brain. It's yours. You choose the direction. I just thought that was so powerful.
I know. Well, you own it. It's yours. And no one, unfortunately, we don't really get taught how to control, or it's not even control, but just drive our brain. Most of us have no idea even what our brain is designed to do. It's basically there to manage your energy, energy in and energy out. And does my human have enough energy to do what it's thinking of doing? So it's here basically to keep you on the planet. And, I say, I don't know if I said it in that book, I've said it in other books, is that, your brain itself doesn't really care whether you get your goal. It doesn't care whether you ride a horse. It doesn't care whether you play Christmas carols on your guitar. It doesn't care. You care. So you have to have a negotiation with your brain. Like you as the human who has these agendas and goals needs to be a coach for your brain. So it doesn't start to kind of it doesn't undermine. That's the whole persistence and procrastination piece. We're not born procrastinators. We procrastinate because we're asking ourselves to do, get off the lounge and go to the paddock and get the horse. The brain goes, too much energy. I think we'll just leave. Let's do that tomorrow. And if I agree, yeah, okay, tomorrow's a better day, I'm out, right? I'm not going to do it. Looks like I procrastinated. No, it's just the brain kind of got in and made a decision for me. I need to control that and go and know strategically how to tell my brain that, no, we're getting up and we're going out to the paddock. And that too is in the new book, for sure. If we don't deal with procrastination, persistence, nothing else will happen in any kind of goal achievement. It has to be done. So that's the first major strategy that we do there.
There was a line in your book which really caught my attention to do with procrastination. It made me rethink. And you said, procrastination is not the same as lazy. And I think sometimes that's a message that we're given a lot. Of
course. Absolutely. I mean, society puts a lot of a judgment on us in our behavior, which we then internalize, right? So if your parents, if you, for example, just didn't get on about your homework and didn't get on about chores, and then your parents kind of, labeled you as lazy or as undisciplined or not having willpower, you just internalize that. So then when you do that later, that's your basic mindset. Your framework is I'm lazy, which is not at all true. But it goes on to have a tremendously, detrimental effect on what people do in their lives. So for me, again, it's about, I'm trying to unpack all of that stuff, give people evidence that they can relate to in their everyday life, that they're fine, and this is how these things work, and then how to work with them to overcome them when it's important for you to do that. It's too much. There's too much out there that says you need discipline, you have to have willpower, and gee, if I was like you, or I could. None of that is true. It's just not true. That we think it's true is what makes it, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Right? So if I think I'm lazy, therefore I don't ever get anything done, that becomes my hard rock excuse for not achieving things. Why don't you get anything done? I'm lazy. No, you're not. You're not. It's just a label you put on yourself, which now gets you out of doing anything. But you really want to get those things done. Yeah. So then we're in a conundrum. So for me, it's unpacking those myths about ourselves that come with the culture, come with the way we were raised, come with the way we were educated, and unpacking it and then building up a different set of beliefs so that people can move forward with things. It's I'm in this world doing what I do because it's problematic for me, or it saddens me when I meet someone who has an absolute desire to do something. And the only reason it's not getting done is because they don't know strategically how to go about getting it done. It's like if I meet a kid who's 20 who wants to become a pilot but didn't do well in school. So at 20, he doesn't feel smart enough to go off to flight school. That's tragic to me.
Yes.
That is absolutely tragic. Or I meet a 50-year-old, 60-year-old who wants to learn to play a musical instrument, and they feel like I'm too old. I'm not very good at music, this too hard. None of that's true. But what it does is it keeps them from achieving. Do you know how joyful it is to learn to play a musical instrument in your 50s and 60s and still be playing when you're 80 or 90? That's 30 years of joy that gets ripped off from people if nobody intervenes at that point. So it's my mission.
Well, I am sure that most of the students at home have had a massive wow moment over the procrastination piece, and how uplifting for you all to know there's so much ahead of all of us, regardless of our age. What could be a strategy? I'm sure you have many, and it would depend on the person, but what would be a strategy to help people overcome procrastination and start to edge towards something that they've long wanted to do?
Well, one is recognizing what triggers the procrastination. So what triggers it is that here we go. This short course here. We set a goal in the future. So I'm here. I want to be there in the future, being able to do something I can't do now, or know something I can't do now. The only way to achieve that goal is by taking frequent and consistent actions, your 1% rule, if I'm understanding it correctly, frequent and consistent action in the direction of that goal. I have to do it long enough in order to achieve it. What's problematic is the kinds of actions we have to take in order to achieve our goals oftentimes are not pleasant. As a matter of fact, 95% of in the written descriptions on the PhD of how people felt when they were engaged in learning something new, doing one of those steps, was negative. Now, we're just little organisms. When our little organism or our brain perceives that what we're doing doesn't feel good, brain kicks in to get us away from doing it. What's the number one way a student can stop the bad sensation? Stop. book their lesson for next week, not go to the lesson this week.
Right.
Tell you they got a tummy ache so that, you know, today's not a good day, they'll come back. They will do, the brain will give them all kinds of excuses that makes it palpable because they don't want to feel guilty. So the excuse has to sound somewhat reasonable, right? So now, so the game becomes, how do I control the mind? So when it's kicking in its automatic program, I feel bad, therefore let's figure out a way to stop. How do I override the brain's propensity to want me to stop? So I do it anyway. So this is like, I mean, as people learn these strategies, they'll write me things and they'll say, I learned that boredom is not a good enough reason to stop. Right? I learned that confusion is, I'm going to be confused until I stick with it long enough to understand, and then the confusion will go away. Confusion is not a good enough reason to stop. Frustration is not a good enough reason to stop. I'm learning how to maybe go jogging or running. Being breathless is not a good enough reason to stop. My legs hurting is not a good enough reason to stop. But what they do is they go, thank you, brain, for telling me my legs. It's not a good enough reason to stop. Keep going.
Yes.
Because as they persist, then the nervous system gets kind of tuned up to doing the new thing that they're doing. So procrastination is something triggered automatically. It's out of control. We have, I'll say this too, because you probably have a lot of women in the group who have children or grandchildren, know that, you know, procrastination and persistence are learned behaviors. We learn them. And then we polish them up like a bloody diamond. So we don't even know we're doing it anymore. Do I feel like getting petrol? Nah, I can get down, I can get home and out tomorrow to do what I got to do. I'll get it tomorrow, right? It's like, it's all over the place. And when I say learned, it's when we're young, and I tell this story in the book, I say, you know, if you come home with your homework and your mom or dad or the grown-up in your life says, what do you have to do for homework? And you go, oh, I've got a thing over here, an art thing, and I've got to write, and then, but I've got math and I hate math and I'm bad at math and everyone laughs at me. If your parent in that moment said, oh, that's okay, calm down, let's do the art project first. What you take, and you get thousands of repetitions. Oh, go out and play for an hour. We'll do the homework later. Well, mom or dad doesn't, your grown up doesn't want you to feel bad. They want to alleviate that stress you're experiencing. So they take it, so they tell you to stop. And you eventually internalize that. And the internalizing is, if what I have to do doesn't feel good, stop.
Right.
Or better yet, go do something else. But if that parent or grown-up had said to you, okay, let's get out the math homework, sit down, let's get that done first. And then your experience is you didn't like it, and you know, you got it done. What happens is at the end of doing it, there's a relief, because now you don't have to think about math homework again.
It's that delayed gratification, isn't it?
Yeah, and then you learn that, and most of the successful people I know will tell you that number one strategy is do all the hard stuff first. This is like musicians who keep playing, you know, they'll play, they've got a little sticky bit that they can't quite get. When they're beginners, what they'll do is they'll go back and they just keep playing the things that feel really good to them. And then they wonder why those got good and this thing didn't get, why they never can play an F chord. It's because every time they try, it's so bad that they go back and they play other chords. Rather than going, F chords are driving me nuts, and I'm going to work on that 15 minutes a day until I never have to think about it again. These are learned behaviors. We pick them up in childhood and we carry them forward in life. My job is to, again, unpack all of that so people have different choices about it. My music students work on F chords a lot in the beginning, so I never have to hear them complaining about F chords being in pieces of music.
You're brilliant.
I am, thank you.
You are. My brain's just exploding with more questions and more ideas, and then just the way that you explain it all, I think so many people are just going, oh my gosh. And what's so beautiful is there's time to implement all of this. And yeah, something that came up to me when hearing you speak then, and I'll be interested in how our students think about this. The world now has got faster and faster. You were one of the original people teaching people how to use Apple computers. Social media and, what I talk about, the seeking mechanism, everything is so hardwired to these quick answers. Everything's available now. Do you find that people are struggling more and more to sit with uncomfortable feelings? They just want that instant gratification. And as a teacher, do you see that in your students?
I see it in, again, it's another mind control thing, and it's understanding the effect of the technology. So one, you have to recognize that a lot of technology can be highly addictive. So what happens is we end up with a range of behaviors of interacting with our technology in a mindless way. We don't think, we're not thinking. And before we know it, we have a problem. I mean, I have met people who cannot leave their phone in another room and go, they can't leave it. They have to take it to the kitchen to put the kettle on. I mean, they just cannot, boom. But that's the addictive nature of the technology. So one is learning how to control your appetite and your access to these types of things. How much brain capacity do you have for absorbing random information, and how much value is the information that you're absorbing? So for me, yes, I check social media, is where I get my news, but I do that in the morning over a cup of coffee before I start the day. And I might check something in the evening, and I don't tend not to see it during the day. And because I always figured if the world blows up, somebody's going to tell me, right? So
Yeah.
I don't need to be knowing. But I think we have to understand the little dopamine hits that we get every time our phone pings is costly. So the brain has only so much attentional resources when you wake up in the morning, right? So there's only so much attention available to you. Right. Every time your phone pings, if you were to pick it up and look, oh, that's my mom, I'll get back to her later, that caused you to break your attention from what you were doing and put it somewhere else. That cost you something.
Yeah.
If you put your attention there, it can be as many as 35 minutes before your brain will go back and pay attention to what you were doing. 35 minutes. So I look and then I go, oh, that's right. I don't need to get to mom, but I better tell my brother about what we're doing. So now I'm distracted there. And then I'm really just, now I go, oh, listen, I haven't had a coffee yet. Let me go grab a cup of coffee. And then I see that the dishes haven't been done. So, I'll do the dishes. So not only is it 35 minutes to get back to the original task I was on once I've been interrupted, but I can do 3 to 5 other tasks before I get back. Wow. Now, if you think about, for some people, how often they allow themselves to go, ooh, it's like a slot machine. Ooh, who's pinging me now? Oh, what's that notification? What's that headline? Like, I don't have notifications on my phone. I don't have any of that because I know the cost. Or on a day when the world is kind of crazy and I want to know what's going on, my phone is upside down, so I don't see them. I choose to stop. I choose to look and spend time. I choose to go back. So this is, again, just strategy training for how you mediate the volume of information that's available. There's no rule that says you have to take it all in. No rule.
The piece.
So if you mindlessly do it, you're going to go toward what's addicting. And I'm telling you, social media, some sorts of cable TV are highly addictive. And I would be protecting my brain from the negative effects of that. Me personally.
That's so powerful what you just talked about. And, I see people go to train their horses with their cell phone in their hand. Okay. Yeah. When I ride, my cell phone is on me in case something was to happen.
Of course.
But everything else is switched off. And horses, I've watched this happen of how uncomfortable they feel when we start checking phones when we're they do not like it, just like my dog doesn't like it when I try and take a cute photo. They feel something that we don't. And what I see as a knock-on effect from this addiction to this fast-paced social media is we want instant results with our horses. And people say, well, my relationship with my horse doesn't look like yours. I'm like, well, how long have you had your horse? Well, 3 months. Well, how long have you been practicing this work?
Right.
3 weeks. Okay, come stay. Let's touch base in a year.
Exactly.
Things can happen really quick. Your shift can happen in a heartbeat, but we've got to get down in the trenches and put the work in. And I think sometimes social media, it pulls us away from that.
Well, the reason why animals react, and cats will do it, birds will do it, horses do it, dogs do it, when you get on your social media, is because you're not paying attention to them, and they know it.
Yeah.
So, and that doesn't mean you needed to be actively attending to them. They just know you're not there.
Yeah.
Because your whole brain's capacity is absorbed with what you're doing, and there's nothing else available there. If you're doing the dishes, they don't get fussed. Why? Because that only takes a little bit of brain activity for you to do that, and so they're fine. But you sit like focused on the TV, or you're focusing on your phone or on a tablet, they go spare with that. Then they're clawing, they're going, hey, what about me? What about me? What about me? So that's one issue you've got. They're sensitive in that way. They're picking up your attention, where your attention is going. And as far as the fast pace of everything, listen, all adults do that. I wrote a book before this one called The Beginner Years, for adults wanting to learn to play a musical instrument, because that's where the mindset, like being a beginner, is hard for adults. They don't remember what it was like to be a beginner as a kid, right? They don't remember the 15 years, 15 it took to learn how to have halfway decent handwriting.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes, I know, right? True. They don't remember the 15 years or 20 years it took to have an adult conversation. So I get people in foreign languages, right? And within 3 months, they've learned a bit of vocabulary, and they get frustrated because they can't speak. Or I get people doing new skills and they get frustrated. After 3 months, they wonder why their guitar playing still sounds terrible. Well, it's supposed to sound terrible. You're a beginner. And it doesn't sound terrible. It just sounds like you're a beginner. And if you look at the people you admire who do things well, they spend oftentimes decades to do what they do. It doesn't mean that it was bad for 2 decades to get there, because there's these small, joyful breakthroughs that you get that, again, give you kind of a dopamine hit to want to wake up tomorrow and keep doing it. So in that book, it's really a book designed to help people survive the first 2 or 3 years of learning a new skill. Now, it's in the context of music, but it could be in any context. Why do we do that? Because 90% of people or more will quit a highly desired thing they want to learn in the first 2 or 3 years. They don't survive being a beginner. If they can survive being a beginner where they kind of start liking how they sound, you don't need to, it's easy after that. They want to pick up the instrument. They want to go skiing. They want to do this. They want to do that, because they feel a competence at that point. It is surviving the beginning years is so hard. And that's your job as a teacher. It's my job as a teacher, is to teach them the reality of this and to give them strategies that help them survive their beginner experience. It's even for me, going off and being a beginner at something, it's like, it is a different set of strategies than once I have the skill and now I'm trying to use it or improve upon it or do something else with it. So yeah. You're spot on about that.
Yeah, you're so right. It's being a beginner again. It can be really hard on our ego as well, I think, sometimes, admitting that actually I really don't know how to do this. And as a kid, that tends to really excite you. You don't think, oh, well, I'm a failure because I don't know how to do it. You're just like, show me, how do I do that? And
that's some kids. Like, that's not all kids.
Yeah, true.
What I will say is that what we have as adults is amnesia of what it was like to learn as kids. I'm around a lot of kids. Kids don't like learning. a lot, as many as adults don't. The only reason kids stick with it is because, one, they're not comparing themselves. Adults compare themselves to kids, which is really bad because adults learn faster than kids, but adults don't believe that until I work with them and they're convinced of that. But the other big thing is that kids have no choice. Like if you woke up 100 kids and you said, do you feel like going to school today? A lot of them would say, no way. No, I don't want to go sit still behind the desk taking notes on things I don't need to know that are really boring. And they want to go see their friends, but most are not engaged in learning. So how do you get a kid to go to school for 15, 18 years? They don't have any choice.
Yes.
We as adults and teachers and peer pressure hold external tension on kids. And they're in a learning time of life. Life is about learning. That's their job. Yeah. You take an adult, it's not their job, and they don't have any external tension on them. So when the going gets tough, they can shoot through. I know adults that will tell me, I don't tell my friends when I have a new goal. And I go, why not? Because I know if I quit, I'm going to be embarrassed or humiliated. When I have a new goal, first thing I do is tell everybody.
Yeah.
Because then I'm not talking to everybody who's going to go, why do you want to do that? Because I usually don't know why I want to do it in the beginning. But my friends will know that it's just something I need to do. They don't ask me why questions, but they check in with me. How's it going? How's this going? What have you been doing with that? Because I know they're going to ask, I'll feel more embarrassed if I have to say, oh, I haven't done anything, than I will to do the task. So I set up this tension where telling them I'm failing is worse than actually doing what it is I have to do. And some of your clients will know if they're going to do something, let's say they're going to a gym program or some sort of exercise program. For many people, it works better if they do it with mates because they don't want to let their mates down. So they don't want to go, but they'll go because they'd rather go than let their friends down. Again, they're creating this is worse than this. So I'll do this.
Yeah.
And again, that's all of that is taught both in this book and in several others because it's quintessential. It's fundamental to our ability to achieve goals. Yeah.
I think that community, it's so important and can really help us achieve our goals that's what's beautiful about this club. And to you students, let's tomorrow off the back of this, get in there and say, hey, who wants to join me in this goal? And let's help each other achieve things. And I found that personally to be super helpful. I just spent a month with Callie in Pennsylvania, and we got into a routine, and you're all going to think we're insane, but we got into a routine of doing our meditation and then jumping in an ice bath, and then from an ice bath to a hot shower, rotating 3 times. If I was doing that on my own, it never would have happened. But because
if you invited me with you and Kelly, it wouldn't have happened for me either. Know that there's 2 kinds of people. There's independent players who like to do things on their own. There's we people who like to do things with groups.
Yeah.
And we don't mix very well.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean an I person can't go do things with other people, but they have certain conditions that have to be met. It doesn't mean we people like yourself can't do things on your own. It's just you have to have certain conditions met. That was the 3rd of the really big whopping strategies that I put in the new book, because so many people will have an activity they want to do. They choose an environment to do it in, but the environment doesn't work. Like when I joined the Scottish pipe bands, that was the big thing. I didn't want to do pipe. I didn't want to be in a band. I was wanting to be an independent player. But my teacher said, you really should join a band because you'll learn a lot. And I thought, okay, well, that pushes my buttons. I joined a band. They were so we oriented. It's like they'd been together 40 years. They loved each other. They didn't give a crap about music, right? They never wanted to play any better. They just wanted to eat sausage rolls and have beer every Wednesday night at the end. For me, that environment didn't work for me. right? Now, I could find group environments that were very serious about their music, that were very structured, where you came in, you worked together, and then you went away and you worked on your own. I love that. That was fine. So a lot of failure in goal achievement happens because people just pick or don't know that it's the environment they've chosen that is actually what's causing them to want to move away. So again, that was, now I've taught that work for, 40 years. It's the number one thing people always loved. Most fun piece that people have, saves relationships, it saves friendships. It's like got that kind of thread to it. But I could never write it. I could never bloom and figure out how to write that piece until and I wrote a post at one point saying, I'm going to bloody figure out how to write this piece because it's so necessary in the context of what I was trying to do in the book. And we finally figured it out.
You blew my mind when you said that adults outstrip children, hands down, we learn faster. We use that excuse all the time. Oh, I can't, I'm old now. Like my brain doesn't work like it used to and all of that. It's like, tell me about this. I mean, it literally blew my mind that we learn faster than children.
Well, adults, one, have a mature brain. And that mature brain has gained a lot of skills. It's got a lot of data, a lot of associations. We've solved problems all of our life. We've concentrated on things. We've tackled new situations, etc. We've got a wealth of experience. Children, now I'm not knocking children because children learn very fast, but it's very diffuse. It's like, it takes however long just even to learn to stand on two legs and go forward. It takes a long time to coordinate their hands and their fingers. You look at a 4-year-old, they're still gripping a crayon or a pencil whole-fistedly because the brain hasn't yet made the connections, all the neural connections needed to have these kind of refined movements. Adults have all of that intact. So when adults come into a new learning situation, they're not coming in as a blank slate. They're coming in with a range of articulation, both physically and mentally. So when we're working with adults, it doesn't matter what the skill is. It could be foreign languages, it could be a physical skill, etc. They will always be beginners of that skill far faster than children because they already have something they're working with. They've already done something maybe similar or like it. If I'm putting an adult on a piano for the first time, they're not working with like mittens, right? They have at least some little bit of articulation in the hands to begin to work with. It may not be very refined, but that can come quite quickly. Foreign languages, adults already have a language and a structure that we can hook into. I get adults all the time saying, oh, yeah, but you should hear my kids, like they've been taking Italian classes in school and they're getting so good. And I go, okay, well, what are they getting good at? They can say so they've gone for a year and they can say their colors and they can say, good day, miss, and they can do this and they've played games and they can count and they know a few words. Now, if I take an adult and say, you love what your kids are doing at 6 years old in their Italian class, go to school with them. You go sit in that class. They're bored out of their brains because I can give them a year worth of that language in a day, or usually even in a few hours. If that makes sense to you.
That makes
so when we look at adults and children, oftentimes it's like the handwriting. I needed a visual way to describe because I get beat up all the time in this kids versus adult things. So I needed to demonstrate it. So I thought, okay, I need a visual activity. So I decided and this is in the last book in the beginner years, I decided to learn to write with my left hand, which I couldn't do. And now I had some advantages, right? I knew how to make letters. I knew how to hold a pen or pencil. I had to remember what kids do. Now, kids use big, thick pens or crayons because they're sticky and they write really big. Like I couldn't write with a ballpoint pen because it was just way beyond my capacity to do that. And in the book, I show pictures of a 7-year-old's handwriting. So we know what an average 7-year-old looks like, which is kind of readable. You can see that they've practiced every single day, probably since they were 4. So in 3 years, that's their handwriting. And then what I did was I took a shot of my work day 1. I wrote for 15 minutes a day with my left hand for 2.5 years. And then I took a shot of that. And there is no 9.5-year-old that can write like that, or a 7-year-old that can write like that. Why? Because I'm coming in as an adult, and I also can apply strategy better. I don't need to have, years of repetition just to be able to control the pressure on the pen. Like that comes quite quickly for an adult. If that makes any sense to you, I don't know. I'm not
It
really
does.
doing
It's absolutely brilliant, and now that kind of negates the excuses that we always make about, oh, well, I'm too old to do that. But
remember, all of these things, if anything, and that's what I'm trying to rip apart in the new work, is looking at what is your lockdown excuse that means you're not going to do anything. If age is, if you've gone, I'm too old to, or my memory's shot, or I don't concentrate as well. I have people say, oh God, I don't read books anymore because it's hard to concentrate. I go, when did you read the last book? Oh, 30 years ago. Well, maybe you just haven't practiced reading books, right? It's like, right. So, yeah. But if you decide age is it's the one thing you can't change. I had a friend just the other day saying she's playing pickleball. She's playing pickleball at an intermediate level. She doesn't know if she can advance it further. She called. She said, I've never thought about age, but all of a sudden I'm starting to think maybe my age is what's keeping me from advancing. All the other people she plays with are like 20 years younger. So we had a conversation. I said, well, what are the other things that might be it? Well, 1, they've been playing longer. 2, they may be just physically more fit. They go 2 hours, she can go an hour and a half and she falls. Maybe they're just aerobically more fit for this kind of thing, et cetera, et cetera. So find the other things that might be also true that are things you can do something about. Because as soon as you go, it's my age, that is like the biggest stop sign.
Yeah.
And your brain loves it when you do that.
Yeah.
Because your brain goes, now that my human thinks it's age, she's not going to expend any energy learning how to play pickleball.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And do you think maybe the antidote to that could be curiosity? I always talk about curiosity with horses. It's so vital in learning about your horses, having the curiosity to watch them, observe them. Where does that come into adult learning?
Well, curiosity is not a state that we're just born with or is naturally going to occur. I can't sit on my lounge and go, gee, I'm just really not very interested in many things. I'm not very curious. If I were really curious about something, I'd go do something. The antidote that drives curiosity is action. It's being engaged. It's being out where you're going to see something you've not seen before. We're going to hear people talk about things they haven't talked about before. I am such an advocate, and I wrote about this in Making a Decision because in that section, because people go, I just don't know how to decide what to do. My antidote, go do bloody anything. Anything. I don't care. It's like open the phone book and whatever it says. Oh, Martha's knitting store. Good. Go learn how to knit. Because you may not want to learn how to knit, but by going to Martha's knitting class or knitting thing, you're going to meet someone. They're going to say something. They're going to have an activity. They're going to have an interest. Or you're going to go, geez, I now know it's not knitting, but it could be this over here. Or I send people off to go do a semester at uni. Doesn't matter what, I don't know what to study. I don't care. Study anything.
Anything.
Throw the cat at the curriculum, wherever it sticks, go do that, right? Because you're around other people, you're hearing things, you're in the library, you're reading things, you're seeing the poster board that there's a rally on Saturday for this kind of cause, and that looks intriguing. So curiosity is absolutely born out of activity. You have to be in motion. And so for me, it's That's why I'm fortunate. I go do so many crazy things that, or I get compelled to do crazy enough things, and I'm just driven to know how things work and what they do and why, because I see other people engaged, and it's like it draws me in to that. And I agree with you in horsemanship. Horsemanship, the more you understand horse behavior and your own behavior, because as you know, and I know, the horse is fine, right? The horse is fine. Horse is just doing what the horse is doing in response and reaction to what signals it's getting. I used to love it. I'd be at Pirelli and people would like back their horse away and they'd want it to go to the circle to the left, right? So they'd go up and they'd gesture and the horse would go to the right. And the human would blame the horse.
Oh, every time.
Every time. Because they didn't recognize, we used to film them and they didn't realize, when they went to go here, they moved their right foot and the horse would go right. So to me, what horses are about is you learning about you. It's always the biggest questions you can ever ask in life when you're doing that kind of work is, what did I do that caused that? What did I do that, how interesting. What did I do that caused my horse to go right? So if you ask your brain that question, it'll go, my human wants to know what caused the horse to go right. And it starts to pay attention. Or what could I do that could cause my horse to go to the left, right? So those two questions to me are the prime questions for like self-education. That's curiosity. How did I do that? What did I do that caused that store clerk to like look at me so squirrely and be angry? Like, what did I do that caused that? It's not about them. What did I do? Now, it might be about them, but if I blame them, I can't fix it. If you blame the horse, you can't fix the horse.
Well, it's easy to blame the other, isn't it?
Yeah, if you get curious about you might find an answer to that. You might find a solution.
Yeah. So, and that's exactly it. If we can be curious about ourselves, we can start to expand in so many.
Absolutely. We are fascinating.
We are, but I think sometimes sorry?
We are truly. We're fascinating little creatures running around, not knowing how to drive this instrument that we've been given.
Yeah.
And I'm, get curious. How strong can it be?
Yeah.
How balanced can it be? How much can it know? It's endless.
How do you take the first step? You are naturally, I think, very curious. I'm quite naturally curious. Our students in general are really good at self-assessment, if you like. But when you're going into something new, or you want to, let's say, get back into riding, how do you take that first step?
Yeah. Okay. Well, before I answer that question, let's just think naturally. So you nor I are naturally curious. No human's curious. Naturally. But we have done enough. We know enough, read enough, are engaged enough. We have students who are asking us questions that it has built, like procrastination, persistence being learned behaviors. We have engaged enough that curiosity is just kind of a way our brain has been trained to work. And I would say any brain can be trained to be curious, because if I see it as a natural thing, it means, I've got it. Sorry, Sally, you don't have it.
You don't.
You're not naturally curious. No, I know what drives curiosity, and I can teach Sally that, and then Sally will start to engage. And if she does it often enough, it starts to feel natural. So that I just put that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as far as taking first steps, there's two behaviors you have to have in any learning context. One is you have to be able to initiate an action, right? You have to be able to start. And then you have to be able to sustain it long enough to get some benefit from doing it. Yeah. Of those two behaviors, which you do need to practice doing if you don't do them comfortably, initiating is the harder of the two. So it's harder to get up off the couch and go to the pool for a swim than it is to stay in the pool long enough to get some effect. You have to get there in order to be able to do that. Initiating action takes a mindset of overriding the procrastination that's keeping you from doing that. So it's like, so you've got three main strategies. One, don't think. I don't think, do I feel like going to the gym? Because I never feel like going to the gym if I ask that question, ever. There's always something more comfortable to be doing than that. Yes. So I don't think about it, I just do it. That's obviously Nike's great line, yes. Cliche, which is not a cliche. It's actually grounded in some pretty hard, fast science there. Second is you do think, but specifically, how good will I feel when I get home from the gym? How good will dinner feel tonight if I've done all my chores and I can just sit down and relax? So do think, but specifically, how good am I going to feel? Or how bad am I going to feel if at the end of the day I haven't done what I needed to do, right? So good or bad. And again, you're just tipping those scales worse, better. Third, just start, decide later. Yeah. Just start, decide later. I used to have to do that with the horses. I mean, it wasn't natural for me to want to go out and play with horses. I'd never seen a horse. I don't wake up in the morning and go, I know what I want to do. I want to go ride my horse. I never had that thought, not once, ever, because it wasn't my thing. It was a job. So for me, it was like I'd play a game. How much can I do in 10 minutes? Like just start 10 minutes with my alarm on. And it was like, okay, get out to the paddock. I could grab the saddle. I could put it there. I could chuck some hay in. My horse would come up. We'd have a nice little chat. And then my alarm would go off. Beep, 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 beep. Now I have a choice. I can either continue or I can put the tack away. My horse can look at me sadly going, oh, you're not going to hang out and play. Yeah. Once I started, it was actually easy to stay and just do something that was useful. Yeah. But it was this. Now I had to practice starting. I had to practice. If you're, for example, if you have a book that you're trying to read and you just, oh, I don't know, maybe tomorrow, maybe the weekend, maybe this, maybe not. No, just start. Set an alarm for 10 minutes, pick up the book, read for 10 minutes. If at the end of 10 minutes you don't want to read anymore, great, that's 3 pages done, right? Done it. But once you're in it, you might find it's easier to want to just keep going. And I would say 3 weeks, 6 weeks, every single day, pick a task to practice, just start. Until starting, getting up, moving, and doing something over here starts to be comfortable, because it's not comfortable. It's not natural for people to do that. So that's what, so that is a behavior you have to install if it's not already within you to do that.
And that's such a great call to action, isn't it? Pick something, anything, and do it every day for 6 weeks and see how you feel.
Every morning I'm going to practice I'm going to read the Italian newspaper for 10 minutes every morning. Like that's, because why do I want to do that? It's like, it's not just natural. So I would do that every day for 10 minutes. So getting going, getting the paper, opening it up, reading becomes something that's, now you're not practicing Italian. What you're doing is practicing starting.
Yes, I love that. It's not the action of, it's not what action you're taking, it's that you are taking an action. I love that. So just a question on the flip side of that. We've got going, let's say we're practicing our pure liberty or our horsemanship. We get back up again when we have a setback. I find that sometimes we can take it quite hard and it makes us want to quit. Sure. What about perceived failures or setbacks?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important subject because for none of us is life a straight line, right? Oh. It's like we have these moments when life exerts itself, meaning some unexpected event comes in. We might have an accident, we have a sick relative, we lose our job, we have to make a move, something comes in that interrupts this nice little pattern of behavior or movement that we have. For me, navigating those becomes quite important to know how to do because inevitably they occur. For me, it's about kind of comparing back and all of a sudden now your focus is on this one thing that you have to do. those things typically are episodic, meaning it has an end point. And so what I'm off, like when I ruptured my ACL when I was at Pirelli running around with Buddy. And now I knew that meant surgery, and I knew that it was an 8-month process for the nerve to grow back and for me to get the foot talking to my brain again. So I knew it was 8 months to do. So rather than thinking it's forever, or rather than thinking I'm never going to get back, my focus became on getting that leg back 100% to where it was the day before I did the ACL. So I'd never have to think about it again. So it became its own like little mini goal or achievement. Now, while I was doing that, it wasn't like, oh, well, the horses are over. No, because I could still do tons of stuff with my horses, and I could study about horses. I could watch other horsemen. Like I could use this downtime to really learn to do other things, to be engaged, to be continuously inspired, even though I wasn't able to go run around in the paddock, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you take a tanking like that interrupts you, it's getting a sense of how long recovery will take, putting a note on the calendar going, this is a good time. I can rethink about doing this. Like I'll be back to being able to do this. So it's not lost forever. I will be reminded. And then it's all focused on what do I need to do to get back to where I was when this started. Like I had Graves' disease, which nearly blooming killed me. And I was at peak fitness at that point. I was running with an Olympic team. Everything was going great. And when that hit, that just wiped me. I couldn't walk. I couldn't go to the refrigerator without my heart rate going crazy. That was 8 months to recover from that one as well. And that was literally, walking, eventually being able to walk for 10 meters with a heart rate monitor on, watch my heart zing up, and then stand still till it came down, walk again till it came up another 10 meters. I do 10 repetitions of that and go home.
Yeah.
And that was like, yes. Now that's all I could do. But then the next day I could go maybe 15 meters. And so eventually I could walk continuously. Eventually I could jog and walk. And over so I'm measurable. I talk a lot in the book about measurable steps, like this absolute millimeter by millimeter by millimeter measurement of change that's in a positive direction. That's what drives the action being consistent over time. And you're just looking to basically get back, but you're going, what else can I be doing? I had a guy who had prostate cancer at the gym. He was wiped out, and he's in his 70s, super fit guy. He was wiped out, came back about 3 months later, super lean. He couldn't lift at all, but he was in that gym every day. And he was hanging out with the guys, and he was having chats, and he was watching them work out. And his brain was kind of exercising. Eventually, he could start working out with a broomstick. But he never missed coming in to be inspired, to know that this is where. And today, I gave him a copy of the book, as I said, he had been such an inspiration to me, watching how he managed his downtime by just being in the environment. Because that's what he would do, right? There's always something we can be doing.
That's so true. And I'm just looking at the clock now, because I know we could there's so many more questions, because your answers are beyond inspiring. And
they're probably long.
No, they're not. They're amazing. And I just wish we could talk all night. I know we have a lot of questions from students. Callie's going to bring in some questions. I have one that came in the Facebook group, which I think is quite an interesting one. And that is how, when you're working with horses, how do you turn off your thinking analytical brain and let it switch into the happening and your intuition side of your brain?
Yeah, that's a transition again from being a beginner.
Yes.
To having enough. So when you're learning a new skill, it is very much just contained in memory as something you have to think through. It's like, think about when you teach children how to tie a shoe, right?
Yeah.
in the beginning, it's like, okay, first I have to put this one over here, and then I got to put one over there, and then I got to put that in, whatever. Well, the horsemanship is like that as well. So you're going to naturally be analytical about everything as a beginner because the memory networks are that you're using are of that type. Now,
Until it's second nature. Yeah.
eventually it pops to another part of the brain, and the memory is a procedural memory, meaning I know how to do it without thinking.
Yes.
We have that experience when we watch kids learning to ride bikes. In the beginning, they're just thinking, they're overthinking everything, right? And then finally they get enough repetition where all of a sudden they just go, right? Like they go. Because that the memory of how to ride is now a procedural memory. They cannot ride for 40 years and get back on a bike. And they might feel a bit rusty for a week, but they're right there because it's stored in a part of the brain that will that's indelible, basically is indelible. So the transition students are looking for is to get enough repetition and trusting that there's going to be a day it just pops, and it is like a pop. It's not linear. It's not like I go here closer. No, it's like I'm thinking. Now you can do things if you feel they're ready to pop, like like making them talk while they're riding. Or when I was learning to canter, Pat would sit up on the hill with his hat and he would go, all I want you to do is stare at my hat. Do not take your eyes off my hat. So by putting my brain on the hat, but now it had to be at a point when I was ready for that kind of breakthrough.
Yeah, definitely. Fabulous. I love that. And you're right. It just pops. You're right.
But you have to be patient and you have to trust it will happen.
You have to believe it will happen.
Yeah, you can't judge it.
Callie, we're going to bring you in now with some questions from the group. We'll get through as many as we can, but we can always try and follow up with those afterwards if we run out of time. But okay, Callie.
So the first question that I want to ask, we had a few that came in around, I'm going to say environment in different ways. This first question is from, forgive me if I pronounce your name incorrectly, but from Garcia. She said, if my goal is to fox hunt in a faster field, how do I practice incrementally and often? Because it's hard to recreate the environment of being out on a hunt.
Yes, well, that's where we get into simulation environments where it's a smaller environment, but it's as big, meaning the movements are just as big as they would be out in the larger environment. When I was riding the motorcycles, for example, it's hard with adults because you put them on a big bike, they do one day of training and then you put them on the road, right? Very bad idea. So what I used to do is I used to get on a small bike, like a little trail bike on a grass track or a little motocross track and just run that until I could wring the neck out of the bike, right? Because I was gaining a lot of experience with the kinds of actions, movements, cornering, etc. I would then need on the road. So I would find kind of simulation environments where I could do just massive amounts of repetition of the kinds of things I'm going to encounter in the bigger environment. Because let's face it, if you're going to do that kind of riding, you're not going to be doing it that often, right? You're not going to do it every day, I would imagine. So if you're only doing it once a week or you're doing it once a month, you don't get enough repetition in your nervous system to be able to handle a tree over here and a fallen stump there and going through water over here and whatever the case may be. You're going down a hill. You just don't gain enough experience. So what I would be doing is setting up environments where every day I could go gallop down a hill or run through the water or jump over a log or whatever are the subsets of the things I'm likely going to find out in the real world. Again, we tend to go too big, too fast. And then we can run into all kinds of problems, meaning we can install a fear that we didn't have before. We can get ourselves injured, et cetera, et cetera. So too much too soon is oftentimes kind of a bad combination. So try to shrink it down so you can focus on the requisite skills that you would need in the bigger environment would be my advice. I don't know that that's always doable for people. You know, whatever environments they're riding in. But I would, if possible, that's certainly what I would be doing.
That's great advice. And there's another element to what you did with the moto practice is that when you're riding a smaller bike on dirt and grass, you lowered the risks. Because if you do have a fall, it's a lower risk. And we can do the same kind of thing with the horses, tool around and do some bigger, faster turns, some different things in the arena where you're kind of lowering your risk before you're going out where there's other horses galloping behind you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like even when you talk about lower to the ground, it's like with adults learning how to ski. And they say, oh God, the kids are so good, they just pick it up. They do. But if you look at children, one, they're really low to the ground.
Yeah.
By the time you put a helmet on them and boots, and they're like Michelin men, you can't hurt them, right? An adult is far from they're much thinner. And so when they fall, it's just a much bigger impact because they're just not as protected as this little bubble that you put a child in, who then has no fear. I always said, if you could get adults in a suit as big as kids, they would just fly because they would have no fear of falling, no fear of crashing, no fear of anything. And if they did crash, it wouldn't hurt and they just get up and go. So you could simulate that. Now, I don't know how to do that with skiing, but that's what happens with adults learning physical skills.
We need those zorb balls.
Yes, exactly.
And all the horses as well. If we could get them used to that, then we'd be able to be much braver, wouldn't we?
Well, and then see what happens is they start actually skiing naturally because they're not afraid. So they start skiing naturally, which then builds the nervous system to have the skill a lot more quickly than it would otherwise. So, yeah.
You talk about in our world is, when people are bracing and they create tension, they then become unstable in the saddle. They're more at risk of falling. They probably will fall and then they lose their confidence. So
absolutely.
Anyway, back to the question. Yeah.
So we had a lot of discussion going on in the chat when you were talking about people that thrive doing things alone, people that thrive in groups, the we people and the me people. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase from a lot of the comments of people expressing some frustration that they just don't have other riders around them. And that's part of why they're part of our online community. But any other advice for we people that find themselves without a community for their interest?
Well, one is very much like what you're doing. Like it might be true that they live in an isolated environment where they just don't have other people to ride with. So shy of moving somewhere to do that. So I think a few things can happen. One, your community is great. So have people to talk about, share videos with, jump online. They might make 2 or 3 really good friends where they can have a conversation in the evening and share things. That's one. 2, I would definitely look for opportunities to ride with groups. Like I know a lot of the Pirelli students also lived in fairly isolated environment, but they turned up on the ranch every summer. Right. So for 2 weeks or 1 month or 2 months, they got their hit of kind of engaging in that kind of riding together, learning, and then we all go drink whiskey at night kind of thing. Right. And the I people, they go and they learn, and then they go to their cabin with maybe 1 other person or 2 other people, and they do their own thing. So I think that there might be opportunities, I'm sure, within the horsemanship, turning up at clinics would be great. Turning up at certain events where you can sit in the stands with your group and be observing what's going on. So when you're there as an auditor, I think they call it, and other things like that. For sure. I mean, I really get we people who like getting together and having fun with an activity. Horsemanship can be problematic for some people because it just doesn't exist around them. I mean, I've traveled many times to different parts of the world to be with a group that's doing something I want to be doing, because it doesn't exist here in Sydney, Australia for me, right? So it's like being able to go, this is a time when I'm going to be served best by doing it with others, and then finding a place where I can do that. So you might have 5 other things. It might spark your mind to think of like 5 other ways people can do that I'm just not familiar with. But I would say if you put your mind to that, there might be some different things you can offer in that way. Like, is there any way to bring cameras out to the pen, and we're doing a Zoom, but we're all in it together. And Sally's going to get on now and go ride, and we're going to watch Sally, and they can hear us yelling out over the cameras, "Yay, Sally, that's really good." I don't know. I'm just pot shotting here.
We do elements of that actually with some of the instructors. So, but I like that idea though of like finding ways. Can we find ways where we can connect together? It's definitely takes some imagination, but it's not impossible. Yeah, I love that question.
Yeah,
And,
I got some ideas. Circle back and see if technology can keep up with them.
Yeah. Well, one other thought too is like, if you can't get that kind of community sense in your horsemanship, it might be engaging in another community activity. So you get your fill going 10-pin bowling or whatever it is. And it then doesn't rub so much that you're isolated with your horsemanship. So it might just be joining a choir or, doing something in a church group or, whatever's your thing. As a way of fulfilling that, so that then your horsemanship doesn't stand out so much for you.
That's a really cool idea, is engage in a group activity in another way, instead of just going, well, I just can't.
Right.
That's a really great idea, because then it wouldn't be so bad if it's, I love that. Brilliant.
Yep, never had that thought before. And then that's a great question. That's a great question for that.
Well, we are perfectly on time here. Is there anything else that you would like to share, Dr. Burns? Anything else that you want to ask Andrea?
4 hours more, please.
I know. Now we're going to through into my daytime. The sun will be up here soon. No, but I do want to acknowledge Andrea. I didn't know of the work that she was doing. I do know Dave Lichtman. So that was kind of a connection and a tie there. And of course, the name Pirelli, is meaningful to me from those years. And so that you reached out so quickly to ask me to jump into this, these are just things you don't say no to, because there are so many people who are stuck for no reason, no fault of their own. It's just that they haven't had an avenue whereby they can learn to do things that help them go forward. So, props on you and Callie for putting this together and putting someone like me in front of these people. I would say also there's a lot of work out there. I mean, even the procrastination persistence piece on the website, there's a couple of articles on goal achievement, which cover all that material. They're free.
In this book.
They can get it, of course, if they want the books. That it's in that book, it's in the beginner year book. It's all over the place. But on the website, the articles, there's a lot of free work there. It's written like I speak, as are my books. So they're pretty friendly. They're funny. They tell a lot of stories and make a lot of sense. So avail yourself of those things, and go well. I look forward to seeing how your series goes over the course of the year. And I live for stories. So that's all. My reward for all things is the stories that come back a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later. So, come back with some great stories, and please be willing. No, I would be interested to hear them if you're willing to share them. So
I would love that. But there's a story about you that sticks in my mind, actually, Dr. Burns, that I just thought was so brilliant and so funny. And at horse class, we love to laugh and all laugh together. And it was when you had very honorably decided to dive into the horse world, knowing nothing, as you admit yourself, nothing about horses, but you wanted to dive in for 5 years so that you could share how to help students of horsemanship learn. And I love the story, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you'd got your horse buddy and you'd gone home with him, and you're there with like your lead rope and your grooming kit with really not too much of an idea of what you were doing. And he went out and lay down in the field and took a nap. And you thought he was dead and had to ring the Pirellis to make sure that he wasn't dead.
I didn't know anything, but I just to backfill that one, I didn't decide the horses. I knew Linda. She'd been a student of mine, and she'd been using a lot of my work in her programs. And she had this idea of putting Pat and I together. And we didn't know why we were doing that. Over time, it became important. They thought to they knew they had gaps kind of in the programs, and they didn't know where they were. And the only way I was going to find the gaps was if I became a Pirelli student. So I could go, this makes sense. Oh, shoot, what? I don't know what this means. So when I could find the gaps, then I knew what needed fixing. And the big thing that needed fixing is that, for as brilliant as it was with the horses, it didn't really understand the human student.
Yes.
So that was the work I brought in. So I wasn't really crazy enough to go selling my home and buying a property and getting horses. I mean, that would be insane. It was, they asked me to do a job, and I said, yes, I would. I felt competent to do that job, but I had to get involved. And yes, I did a pocket guide, a Pirelli pocket guide, and my horse. And I could, and you're trying to read and he would get bored. So he would just lie down right in front of my feet. And I'd have a pocket guide reading. He'd go, well, whenever you figure out what you're supposed to do, would you wake me up and we'll go do something, kind of thing. But I didn't know horses lay down.
Sounds like a great horse to learn with.
I know, he was hysterical. He was a great character. He's like Dennis the Menace with the slingshot in the back pocket and a cap on backwards. That is absolutely what his nature was. He was so pissing. I know.
Well, you've inspired so many of us, and you continue to. And I think I'm going to go as far as to say you're going to give a lot of our students and outside of here the freedom to start reinventing their lives. That's so powerful. And to know that age is not a limitation. I recommend you guys to go and get this book. It is really, really incredible. It's called The Dangerous Cultural Messages About Getting Older. It's going to knock out the park so many of the beliefs that you had and give you freedom to get out there and try. We're going to put all of the links to Stephanie's, Dr. Burns's stuff in the show notes below. And I just want to say thank you for changing my life, and thank you for continuing to do the work that you do.
You're very, very welcome.